Good morning to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning to all our viewers, wherever you may be, in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as outside of our borders. Welcome to our weekly media briefing. My name is Wade Mark, leader of opposition business in the Senate. And on my immediate right, I have the distinguished and honorable Dinesh Rambali, attorney at law and MP for Chaguanas West. This morning, we will in fact address two important issues confronting our nation at this point in time. We look at the continued criminality, violence, and murders, and what it means as we go forward for our economy and society. That will be addressed by our colleague from Chaguanas West, and after he is through, I will give you an understanding or an appreciation of the hypocrisy, doublespeak of this government as it relates to white-collar crime and corruption. Looking at what has been taking place in the public sector, particularly in the absence of the procurement legislation, resulting in billions of dollars in leakages that can constitute, as we have described, a slush fund that is heading towards the construction of Balize House, better known as the Tower of Babel, and the emergence of our new Nimrod in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'd like to, at this time, turn over the proceedings to my distinguished and honorable colleague and friend, the Honorable Dinesh Rambali, who will address you at this time. The floor is yours, comrade.
Thank you very much, Senator, the Honorable Wade Mark. On this morning, of course, on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition, Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, Senior Counsel, my parliamentary colleagues, Senator Mark, and myself, we wish to bring some of these pertinent matters to your home domain through live stream, through the media. So I want to welcome you all to our Sunday presser, and we will do our utmost best in terms of highlighting those facts which are pertinent to holding the government accountable. I have, of course, Senator Mark, prepared some of my own speaking notes and some of the points that I wish to raise this morning. And particularly, I want to deal with the issue of crime. Our presser, of course, ladies and gentlemen, you would have noticed from the adverts, the flyer that the opposition's office would have issued. We intend to deal with the government's incompetence. And in dealing with the government's incompetence, I want to start this morning by saying that the real evil plaguing our society is this government's incompetence. That is the evil. I know recently we have been hearing a lot of talk about an evil has betaken our land. And I want to say that that evil is squarely the Rowley-led government's incompetence. And so I want to get cracking with, I depart from my notes a little bit, but I want to start with what I woke up to this morning. And what I saw this morning was this front page of the Trinidad Guardian. Big mix-up in Vindra case. AG claims documents served on wrong department. Ladies and gentlemen, this points to a continuing comedy of errors. This points to a tragedy. You have where this poor unfortunate lady, her soulmate, rest in peace, she has not, her family members has not obtained justice up till this day. You have had murder accused before the courts. They have gotten off of those charges. They have brought malicious prosecution claims against the state, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and they have succeeded in obtaining an award of damages to the tune of some $20 million. And that $20 million, they may deserve it, but by virtue of the Attorney General's office and squarely the Attorney General's continuing incompetence, this is where we are today. This is the real tragedy, that there is no justice for this lady. There is no justice that her family can ever achieve. And here it is, the entire republic, the entire citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago, we are now going to have to foot a bill of $20+ million because of the incompetence of Reginald Amor Senior Counsel. And I want to deal with this squarely. When you look at the Trinidad Guardian, big mix-up in Vindra, remember, the Prime Minister said he was awaiting when word of this judgment had gotten out in the public domain. None other than Prime Minister Rowley said he was awaiting word from his Attorney General. His Attorney General was out of the country for a couple of days, and Minister Stuart Young, who was acting AG, came in and he dropped a big, hefty, voluminous bundle of documents, and he said, he dropped it in front of all of you members of the media on top of the desk, and he said, look, this is the file. This is what we're dealing with, and this is what we will be taking as the context of this matter. And they went on when Attorney General Amor came back, substantive AG, came back into the country some 1 or 2 days after Minister Stuart Young would have addressed the country. What did he say? He said he was going to set up a committee to investigate its own department's errors to determine what had happened. I addressed this last week, but when I see this week, and then when you open the Guardian and you see Justice John, the headline is Justice John on missing file probe, work on interim report challenging fine to come in June 30th. So the work on the interim report, whenever before that report was delivered, if it was on Thursday, before then, when did we ever hear that an interim report was forthcoming? Whoever contemplated that we would have an interim report and we would now have to await a final report? What is the to wait a report? What is really going on in this country? What is taking place? The other page, and these are full page articles, speaks of AG's department in court filing, mix up in serving documents in Naipaul Coolman case. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine we have to spend monies and we don't know what is the bill as yet. Last week we asked for a preliminary bill or whatever may have been requested and on the part of Stanley John and Ralston Nelson. I want to say that this whole case here where they're trying to say it is titled Big Mix-Up, I want to put it squarely on AG Amor and Prime Minister Rowley, that you see this, you citizens of the country, this is a big waste of taxpayers' monies. That is what this is, a big waste of taxpayer dollars. And this is what we have to put up with. So the real evil in the society is the incompetence of Rowley and his cabinet. And I want to say that what we are witnessing, having to go through the receipt of an interim report to be followed by a final report, is what I class as state abuse of power. This is where the government is abusing its power to cover up its incompetence. That is what it is. Rowley-led government is using your taxpayer dollars. He is and his government, they are abusing their power to cover up their incompetence. That is what this Guardian speaks to today. And if it is one wasn't bad enough in terms of how it classes the work and the incompetence of the government, look at today's editorial. This is not UNC, this is not Senator Wade Mack, it is not Dinesh Rambali, it certainly is not Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar. Look at what they say here. This is the Sunday Express, and what is the headline? Embarrassing AGs, not singular, you know. Embarrassing AGs, plural. And they go through what it is they deem to be the embarrassment, the incompetence of successive attorney generals under Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley-led government. And I want to say, listen to what they say here. On Friday, AG Amo again showed, I'm quoting the last 2 to 3 paragraphs. On Friday, AG Amo again showed how out of touch he was by hosting an unnecessary show as he took receipt of the first part of an investigation into the so-called missing file that had resulted in a 20 million default judgment against the state. Watching the self-congratulatory photo issued by his office, meaning issued by AG Amo's office, one could hardly imagine that the report being handed to the Attorney General Amo had emanated from a scandal in his office for which he himself would have been under investigation. This is Sunday Express opinion editorial. This newspaper is on the record with its reservations about AG Amo's role in commissioning this investigation. Now that he has the report in hand, he should simply make it public in its entirety, especially since the second part has no bearing on the first. Ladies and gentlemen, last week we, members of the opposition, we asked for that report, a commitment that that report be made immediately available in the public domain, and we want to know the cost of same. So I spoke about this whole investigation into AG Amo being one of a state abuse of the government's abuse of state power at your taxpayers' costs. And this is something that we will be marshalling in the public domain because we feel very strongly about this. This is really incompetence of the highest order. What all of the articles have said to date, and now what is being told by way of the AG's office, and I want to say particularly AG Amo, is that you have documents. They are claiming that when the claim was filed, that it was served on their office, but there was some sort of mix-up. Ladies and gentlemen, you want the population, imagine they want us to believe that in these departments that there are not designated people who collect service of documents. If you go to an ordinary office, a private office, it may be the secretary, it may be a receptionist, there is somebody who is in charge of receiving documents, whether it be mail, whether it be truck pack courier, whether it be DHL, FedEx, whatever it may be, whether it be a personal service. So you have someone, they are trying to hoodwink the population into thinking that there was something wrong with the service when they have designated people in every office, in every ministry's office. You have persons who are designated to receive documents. In particular, in the office of the Attorney General, in the office of the Chief State Solicitor, in the office of the Solicitor General, there are specific persons who will accept service of documents. So if it is court documents, you have a particular staff team that will accept those documents. If it is documents where we call it originating action, meaning that you are now filing a claim. So this is the originating documents, which is the documents that now have codified the claim for the first time and you are being served. There are specific staff members who accept those documents, and any other documents after those documents that are filed within the court proceedings are accepted by a general staff. You have all of these systems, and you mean to tell me there was a mix-up and somehow or the other that is to blame, and using language like sinister? The incompetence is at your own doorstep. And what we have noticed is that they have filed an application between last Sunday and today. We have noticed that they have filed an application to set aside the default judgment. Something that was told to them. I am not going to pronounce on merits or not. I am not being paid for that, and that is not the role of the opposition. We want accountability. That is what we want. And what has happened is that that was told to them long before, that if you have concerns about this default judgment and you feel something is sinister, you should apply to set aside the judgment, because one of the limbs in satisfying the court that a judgment should be set aside is how quickly you moved to make an application to set aside. So you will have to satisfy the court that you did not unduly delay. So if you knew, AG Amor, that there was something that was sinister about what was taking place, why didn't you move right away to set aside? You come and you hide behind the sham of a committee that has been set up to investigate the matter. That committee really has now only produced an interim report, according to you, something we are hearing for the first time, with a final report to come in June, 30th of June. So what really, Senator Mark, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, what the hell is taking place in this country under AG Amor? And I want to say squarely, they say mix-up of documents. It doesn't end there, you know. And you know what it boils down to? I should tell people this, because to make them understand, this is worse. AG Amor is making a worse excuse than a child saying, dog ate my homework. That is what he is doing. It is worse than dog ate my homework. You can excuse somebody coming and saying, well, I spilled some Morbi on my essay and I couldn't bring it to school today. It was wet and I couldn't put it in my bag. You know, it got soaked, rain wet my bag, something like that. My homework, you know, melting in the copybook. You can excuse children for saying that. You know why? Because they are at an age where they might be very well telling the truth, and taxpayers' money is not going down the drain for that. But this, where dog ate my homework, where Amor is essentially saying that, or worse than that, we the taxpayers have to pay for that kind of nonsense excuse. So I really feel very strongly about this, because what is happening in this country is you have a situation where incompetence is to the height, to the extremity of being an evil that is plaguing our society. And until we do not get rid of that evil, we are not going to move forward. You know what I observed here as well? It appears as though Ralston Nelson is the one appointed by Amor to advise the state. And I saw some documents. It would appear that Ralston Nelson is the one who is in effect the advocate attorney in that application to set aside. And I want to quickly pull up those documents, because there is a point which I wish to raise on that. And this is something that it is of concern to you, Trinidad and Tobago, because it is taxpayer dollars that is going to go down the drain if this turns out to be true. And what is the importance behind these things? You are seeing so many blurred lines, demarcations, which are necessary to ensure the integrity in processes, whether in public life or otherwise. And when we are not seeing that, it means that these blurred lines are going to cause problems later down the road. Yes. So Ralston Nelson, Senior Counsel, is the senior advocate attorney in this matter. I want to know, ladies and gentlemen, Trinidad and Tobago, how you could hire Stanley John to head an investigating committee. Sorry, not Stanley John, Justice Ralston Nelson. How can you have him being part and parcel of this committee, right? He's the one who's going to be advising and advising the state, notwithstanding that Stanley John is the one who is the lead investigator. Justice Ralston Nelson has been appointed to advise the state on the way forward. So you are acting in a manner where you are advising the AG that you are receiving documents and receiving this interim report and whatever else you are getting from the committee, and you are the one who is going to stand up in the court and tell the court and pretend or appear as though you are an independent, impartial advocate. An advocate must not in any way be caught up with the facts of the matter. And that is what we are seeing here, the blurred lines. So you tell me what is really going on in this country. Why is it that Justice Ralston Nelson is part and parcel of this matter in terms of advising? He is involved in the matrix of the factual matrix, in the matrix of the events taking place, in the determining what evidence has come forward in terms of the committee's report, what is relevant and what is not relevant, and you are going to be marshalling the Attorney General's case, the state's case before the court. I find something highly irregular when it comes to that blurred lines. There should be proper demarcation. The last time we saw those blurred lines is when we had one senior counsel who was part and parcel, or heavily involved, I should say, not part and parcel, heavily involved in drafting an indemnity agreement for one Vincent Nelson, but then coming to represent the state to say, well, okay, something was wrong with that agreement. So what is going on in this country? So I leave that there for now. What we are seeing is they are baiting, the government is attempting to bait you members of the population into thinking that something is sinister, when all the while it is just their incompetence. And now they are using the report, spending your taxpayer dollars to say that this incompetence is something that, you know, it is otherwise. They want to classify it as something else. So I leave that there for now. So I go back to my original theme. The real evil plaguing our society is the government's incompetence. And you know, I had not intended to really go off on that tone and that trajectory so early in the day, because last week, Senator Mark, we ended with good tidings of our multi-religious observances and celebrations. Imagine today is the 10th day of Ramadan. Hindus have finished one period of observance and they're moving on to Hanuman Jayanti on Wednesday. So they quickly approach the celebration of Hanuman Jayanti. Our Christian brothers and sisters continue through the season of Lent, something we will hear about. Today is Palm Sunday, the day that commemorates Christ's triumphant entry into Jerusalem. Today is a reminder of the welcoming of Jesus Christ into our hearts and of our willingness to follow him. And this is where I really wanted to start off, and so we could start taking things. But when you see these kinds of headlines and the Attorney General, who will go down Book of World Records achievement that he has contracted COVID the most amount of times in the world, you have an Attorney General who has proven himself to be the most incompetent minister in any performing government or non-performing government in the shortest possible time. That is Attorney General Amor. So today I wanted to start on a positive note, and why I wanted to start there is because I want to make the point, despite all of this here, that we as a people, you the citizenry, you Trinidad and Tobago, we as members in the opposition, we are indeed a blessed people. I maintain that. We are already a praying people. I want to go on to crime and to say that, do you remember the times when we went out, whether by day or by night, and we greeted each other with pleasantries? Now we greet each other with in anxious relief, in exclamations of glad to see you reach safely. We take leave. We take early leave from family gatherings and dinners with friends with the hopeful watchwords, reach home safe. So after having a nice pleasant time, we go back into a panic mode, make sure and reach home safe. How times, ladies and gentlemen, have changed over the past 7 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I am both a Hindu priest and a member of parliament. But I am not here this morning to talk about the value of prayer and the blessings of the Lord. I am here to talk about the responsibilities of government officials and arms of the state. The role and function of government officials is to help improve the lives of the citizens of our nation, something Senator Mark always raises in the Senate and always tells us as younger parliamentarians. In so doing, it must maintain law and order and ensure our peace and security. To do this, ladies and gentlemen, government officials must craft policy, not preach sermons. Last year, our nation witnessed a horrendous surge of violent crime, which saw over 600 people murdered. This was the highest recorded number of murders in our history. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a national crisis. As of today, Trinidad and Tobago has already seen for 2023 over 140 people being murdered. At this same time last year, the murder toll was 125. I saw one media house cite figures, I believe it is the Sunday Newsday. I saw them cite figures as being 142 in 2023, meaning as of today, versus 122 in 2022. But whichever figures you choose, this means 2023 is shaping up to be a more violent and bloody year. In opposition, when Dr. Rowley was there, he told the nation that he would measure the war on crime by how the population felt. Today, 7 years later, as Prime Minister, he's telling us that his plan for us to get is to get on our knees and to pray. Dr. Rowley, the only prayer people across our nation want the Almighty to answer is to rid Trinidad and Tobago of you and your backward and incompetent government. But regarding the direct response to crime, I want to first address the Commissioner of Police, Ms. Erla Herwood Christopher. I understand that this PNM government has done all it can to deprive the TTPS of resources as well as lower morale, which program reached a peak with the fiasco of Rowley intercepting a police service commission's merit list at President's House so he could remove the then Commissioner Gary Griffith. So I do not blame Ms. Herwood Christopher for the very difficult task she is confronted with. She must manage an under-resourced and a demoralized TTPS while this PNM government continues to attack its independence. However, I would offer a word of caution to Ms. Herwood Christopher. You have started off on the wrong foot by parroting this Rowley-led PNM's government's excuses for failing to instill public confidence that there is a serious plan to tackle violent crime. I just want to remind people of what Commissioner of Police Erla Herwood Christopher said recently. And she said, an evil has spread over the land, and we must recognize, those of you who are spiritually inclined, you must recognize that this is beyond the physical, because the police can come up with whatever strategy, but unless we list the help of God, we will be working in vain. Those are the words of our new Commissioner of Police, Herwood Christopher. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, this is exactly what Rowley and Hines started saying back in 2022 when they realized that they had failed miserably to tackle crime and the number of murders was set to reach a record high of 600 plus. This is all part of a worrying trend on the part of this Rowley-led government to find a boogeyman to blame for every problem. So, where do we go from here? The Commissioner of Police is following suit by making God the boogeyman, by saying that the TTPS is powerless without God. Ladies and gentlemen, if we allow the top cop to continue on her present trajectory, we could very well face a situation where if you are being robbed, if criminals are breaking down your door and you dial 999 for help, instead of police officers being deployed with response teams to help you to curb crime, they will call upon you to join them in a prayer over the phone. They will tell you, step on your knees, and they will say a prayer while criminals are breaking down your doors and assaulting your family members. Perhaps we should just abandon the idea of developing the National Forensic Science Center and just call the local priest. Let us call the imam. Let us call a pundit to conduct forensic examinations. I want to remind the Commissioner that fighting crime involves data and scientific investigation of crimes, pursuit and apprehension of criminals, and proactive solutions to curb crime. That is what real police work is. So I again call on the Commissioner of Police to start relying on policy and not providence. I want to talk about, I have seen today in the papers for the first time, the Commissioner of Police took some time in a recent forum to highlight a 10-point plan. Now, having seen those 10-point plans unleashed, at first I was intrigued and wondered what was the 10-point anti-crime plan. But after reading it and seeing as one of the initiatives, and I want to quote the initiative, among her initiatives will be precision policing, focusing the resources of the police to address violent crime, dismantling of gangs by using precision policing legislation, targeting communities with high reports of crime, and retrieval of illegal guns. That was one of the plans. I thought when I read that had to be an April Fool's joke, because there's absolutely nothing of any substance in her word salad with platitude of garnish. I cannot help but think, ladies and gentlemen, that what has been unveiled by the Commissioner of Police illustrates how utterly destitute of original ideas the TTPS top brass really is. They seem reduced to putting a coat of paint on the time-worn methods that have been passed out as policing and that have proven to be useless in stemming the rapid increase in crime. However, before I say it is time for the top cop to declare bankruptcy and close up shop, and mind you, in such an event, she should definitely take Minister Fitzgerald Hines with her. I am saying today, before I take that position, I am prepared to await some further details or maybe some deeper fleshing out by the Commissioner of Police of her crime plans. Now let me say one thing though. Ms. Christopher was not totally wrong when she said an evil has spread over the land, and this is where I started today. There is an evil across our land, and this evil is called the Keith Rowley and his incompetent government. And no, ladies and gentlemen, I am not being hyperbolic using the term evil to describe the Rowley government. It was an evil act for Keith Rowley's government to undermine the office of the DPP and the judiciary by crafting an illegal indemnity to a state witness, Vincent Nelson, with the apparent attempt to influence the testimony of that witness. It is evil of Keith Rowley to inflict pain and suffering on the people of our nation by refusing to remove a blatantly incompetent and out-of-touch Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines. It is evil of Keith Rowley to hoodwink the population into thinking the problem of crime lies with the house of God and not his elected office. It is evil of Keith Rowley and his government to deny the reality of the hardships being faced by hundreds of thousands of our citizens, whether it's rampant crime, high unemployment, inadequate housing, lack of pipe-borne water, rising food prices, escalating rents and mortgages, lack of access to higher education. The list goes on and on. I want to turn quickly to evil inflicted upon our children. Evil is an incompetence. When we talk, I'm talking specifically relating to dealing with children now and matters that involve an impact on children. The evil is an incompetence which leads to neglect of children and failing to take them out of harm's way. We have a situation here where children's homes have become unlicensed because the facilities and amenities in these homes are not meeting the standards required under law. The government is contented with its own incompetence in failing to prevent harm to foster and vulnerable children. Today, Guardian newspaper speaks to statistics, about 2 full pages of the Guardian speaks to statistics where for 2020 to 2022, suggesting that during that period of time, you had some 2,800 children dropping out from school. So according to the article, at least 151 primary school pupils dropped out of government schools, while another, listen to this figure, 2,663 students dropped out of government secondary schools. A retired teacher cited in the Guardian article, Shirazuddin Mohammed, is quoted in the article as speaking about connectivity issues during the pandemic as a contributing factor and access to devices. You remember the Rowley-led government took away children's laptops from 2015 after the Kamla Prasad Bisesar's UNC-led government had invested 5 years of laptops to secondary school students. So look at the impact here. So the real evil, ladies and gentlemen, is an incompetent, uncaring, neglectful government which is quite happy to have thousands of children drop out of school. Not hundreds, not tens, thousands, 2,800. And bringing back the discussion to crime, what the hell does the government really think is going to happen to the majority of these school dropouts? Really, what do they think will happen in our society? Do you know that recently the High Court, the Children Court Division, ruled that none other than the Children's Authority had failed to adhere to statutory requirements of Section 23 of the Children Authorities Act, thereby resulting in severe prejudice and hardship to the child. I want to turn quickly to that particular judgment. But what is the importance of that, ladies and gentlemen? The importance of that is that you have a system under this government that is, due to their incompetence, falling apart. And this is a judgment which was delivered on the 9th of March, and the judiciary issued a statement on the 25th of March. And they say on the 19th of April, the director of the counter-trafficking unit reported to the Children's Authority that on the 15th of April, officers attached to the ARIMA Criminal Investigation Department conducted an exercise where a total of 9 females, Latin American females, were held. The females were later medically examined and subsequently handed over to the counter-trafficking unit. On that same day, the director of the counter-trafficking unit contacted the applicant, meaning the Children's Authority, and requested placement for a child who was a national of the Republic of Venezuela. In or around 19 April 2022, the child was then received into the care of the applicant, meaning in early April of 2022, the child was received into the care of the Children's Authority. And by virtue of the Children's Act, where an application has to be made to make that child a ward of court, and therefore the child will be deemed in need of care and protection, etc., etc. And this is where you will have the state resources now deployed to help protect that child from suffering any injury to health or otherwise. It is said that upon receipt of the child, the applicant, meaning the Children's Authority, placed that child in a St. Jude's Home for Girls in December 2022. And the child was then transferred to some other location where, and that is not disclosed, where she continues to reside to date. So what is the benefit of all of that? The benefit of saying all of that is that it took the Children's Authority 8 months. 8 months. You are required under Section 23 of the Children's Authority to make an application immediately to make that child a ward of court, so that the child can now be a ward of court. Means that you are now in the care and custody of the court. The court has systems. This is why the judiciary put out a release concerning this matter as well, because they have systems in place now that will ensure, it will kick in, so to speak, to ensure that the child is properly looked after. But if you take 8 months, Children Authority, to make an application to make the child a ward of court, what do you think happened between that period of the child being transferred to the Children's Authority and you making that application? So this is where we are in terms of protecting our vulnerable children in this society. The incompetence of the Keith Rowley-led government is the evil that is plaguing our society, and that is now impacting on our innocent children. Maybe, ladies and gentlemen, I should make a call on this Palm Sunday to all religious persons, all priests, imams, pundits, pastors, all churches, all temples, all masjids, all religious leaders, to pray in unison, to pray in union, to rid our beautiful country of this evil that is incompetence. As I That is the United States of America Act 2016. That is what we call FATCA. Anti-Gang Act of 2018, the Insurance Act 2016, Anti-Terrorism Amendment Act 2018, Licensing Committee Validation Act 2021, the bail access, and this one is now specifically relating to a list of anti-crime bills which the opposition also supported. The bail access to bail amendment bill 2017, where we made extensive amendments. The miscellaneous provisions, mutual assistance in criminal matters, proceeds of crime, financial intelligence unit of Trinidad and Tobago, customs and exchange control bill 2017. Again, we made extensive amendments. The miscellaneous provisions, Supreme Court of Judicature Children bill 2018. The Payments into Court Bill 2018, Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment number 2, Bill 2019, the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Amendment Bill 2018, the Firearms Amendment Bill 2019, the Civil Asset Recovery and Management and Unexplained Wealth Bill 2019. Furthermore, on 2 occasions, and I'm saying this for the umpteenth time, on 2 occasions in 2016 and 2018, the leader of the opposition, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, personally reached out to the Prime Minister via letter and offered to meet with him so that she could find common ground on ways in which we could. Government does not require the opposition support to ensure that CCTV cameras are properly maintained and working, that scanners are operational at our ports, that our borders are properly secured, or that the Police Service Commission can properly do its job and recommend a substantive police commissioner when that time comes to lead the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The failure to do these things is all down to this negligent, incompetent government and no one else. And in terms of solutions, you always hear this notion, this narrative being propelled, and of course it is a parroting of PNM propaganda that the UNC has no solutions. We don't offer solutions. I want to remind you that the leader of the opposition, again, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, delivered a comprehensive economic transformation master plan, giving details about how the opposition intends to restore our economy and reduce crime and violence. You see, ladies and gentlemen, in our society, violent crime is a complex issue that requires a holistic approach with modern approaches to policing, criminal justice, education, as well as early childcare. We know that. We have studied it and we have discussed this. So some of the proposals in our plans include the Ministry of National Security will be split into a modern Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of Defense. It has to be properly equipped. It has to be properly designated. All new police recruits will have to possess at least a diploma in policing. We will develop these diplomas which will involve investigation, procedures in criminology, law, etc., undergraduate and postgraduate degree programs, and implement them at the UE campus. Oftentimes, without parental support, children of offenders become victims of abuse and subsequent criminal offenders. We will introduce programs for the financial, psychological, and emotional support of these children for the duration of their parents' incarceration. We plan to utilize the support of the police youth clubs, religious organizations, schools, social services, etc. We will partner with them and we will make sure they are properly resourced. In the interest of time, I refer to these plans, of course, and I stop at this point in a summary manner. But we are quite prepared to detail our solution-driven plans in any forum, any day, at any time. And I want to say, lastly, that the political will, I wish to end by reminding the nation that it was a UNC-led government under Mrs. Prasad Bisesa that reduced violent crime by 45%. In fact, by 2015, Trinidad and Tobago had the lowest number of serious crimes reported since 1984. That was not achieved by throwing up our hands up in the air and saying, let us pray. It was achieved by collaborating with stakeholders, listening to expert advice, and especially listening to the public rather than blaming the public. So this is something that I wanted to bring. And Senator Mark, I want to quickly hand over to you. I do apologize if we took a little bit beyond the time, but these are important matters that we have to throw out to the public.
Yeah, well, let me thank my honorable colleague and friend Dinesh for addressing you on some very fundamental issues that are currently confronting our society and nation. I think if there's one thing he left with us this morning is when he spoke to the issue of the real evil that is plaguing our nation. That is the kleptocratic PNM administration led by a dictator and a modern kleptocrat. Members of the media, this morning I would like to look at what I consider to be the economic and financial costs of corruption to the citizens of this country as it relates to the infrastructural sector, or what we call the construction sector. May I remind Trinidad and Tobago that there are two essential ministries or offices that are responsible for most of government construction and projects in Trinidad and Tobago. One is under the office of the Prime Minister. I refer to UDCOT. That is now under the office of the Prime Minister, and it has been there since November of 2018. And the other section of the ministry that has responsibility for projects is the Ministry of Works and Transport. Drainage works under that particular ministry's purview. And it has a state entity under its control, NIDCO, the National Infrastructure Development Company Limited. And recently, we witnessed a secondary roads, I think, rehabilitation company being established to the tune of 100 million. Then it was increased by another 200 million. So if my memory serves me right, $300 million was placed under this secondary school or secondary roads rehabilitation company. It was placed under the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, only to be removed recently and placed under the Ministry of Works and Transport. Now, I raise this to let you know, members of the media and the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that our country spends every year on the acquisition of goods, services, and other works some 26 to 30 billion dollars out of a budget of this year of 57.8 or 6 billion dollars. So we are talking about a sizable amount of monies allocated for the acquisition of goods, services, and other works. When you multiply that, Dinesh, by 8, we are talking about close to $200 billion in the last 8 years that was used for the purchase of goods, services, and other works. Wow. We were told by the recently resigned, his contract was not renewed, procurement regulator, that there's a leakage of between 5 to 5.2 billion dollars on an annual basis, with the government's failure to proclaim the whole of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act? 5 billion to 5.2 billion that we lose to corruption, to kickbacks, and to bribes in the last 7 to 8 years. Imagine what that would have done. We are talking about 5 billion, just to be conservative. Multiply that by 8. That is 8 fives are $40 billion that was leaked. Because why? The Prime Minister, who hypocritically speaks about white collar crime, refused for 7 long years. This is the 8th year that the Prime Minister, who boasts that he is Mr. Corruption Buster, he is after white collar criminality. He's the one who brought in private prosecutors from the United Kingdom and allocated and paid out some $66 million without the knowledge of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And this Prime Minister has failed to proclaim, implement, and operationalize the public procurement law. Members of the media, I want to take you to 2 examples of what is called questionable dealings when it comes to the construction of bridges and the construction of highways, to demonstrate where the government, in its refusal to proclaim and operationalize the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act, what it has meant to the lives, to the livelihoods of the citizens of this republic. Because of his failure to proclaim that Public Procurement Act, the government has been able to use its own internal mechanisms to award contracts to their friends, their family, and their financiers. And that is why slush funds have been established. And that is why what we have described, Dinesh, as the Tower of Babel, which is Balize House, where tens of millions of dollars have been provided to the P&M through this slush fund. So to get a contract with the government, there is an arrangement between the P&M and contractors to pay millions of dollars as kickbacks so that they can construct their Tower of Babel. And we now have in Trinidad and Tobago a new Nimrod who is ruling the land, who has refused to proclaim, to operationalize, to implement our procurement legislation, resulting in billions and billions of dollars being theft, being stolen, being offered as kickback. And one of the recipients, one of the beneficiaries is Balize House on Tranquility Street. And that is why the UNC has been calling, not on Ferdy Ferreira, we have been calling on the Prime Minister. He is the chief negotiator, we understand, to give an account of the names of every donor and how much money they have contributed to the construction of the $100 million Tower of Babel. So we call on Nimrod, the modern Nimrod, who is ruling this land, to account for the monies that you have received from donors for the construction of Balize House. Members of the media, I want to bring to your attention how the government has been able to manipulate the process of issuing contracts to their friends and family and financiers. I have two examples to share with you this morning. The first one deals with a bridge, Dinesh, that was constructed over a diverted river called the Kunopo. The Kunapo Bridge in Sangregandi. Right? You may remember, members of the public, the Minister of Works and Transport cut the ribbon to open the Kunopo Bridge some years ago. I believe it was just before the 2019 local government elections. Now, this project included the construction of a new bridge and roadway. The Kunopo River channel, which ran under the old bridge, was realigned, Dinesh, to now run under the new bridge that was constructed. According to a Newsday report dated the 11th of August 2019, the Director of Bridges, one Jagdio Mahadio, indicated that two options were presented in 2016 for this Kunopo Bridge project, which meant that in 2016 a decision still had to be made regarding the manner in which the project will be undertaken, whether the bridge will remain where it was or whether it will be relocated. Well, Mr. Mahadio stated that from the options, the design which was chosen involved, Dinesh, the diversion of the river channel and the acquisition of lands. They had to run, therefore, Dinesh, the river through a private owner's land. Not where it was before. They diverted it. And it went through what? Private owner's land. And therefore they had to relocate the bridge. And it was constructed over this new river channel. Wow. Now, we have a survey plan for the land before the start of the project. This is the survey plan here. It's here. Ladies and gentlemen, this project started, as you can see, on the private owner's land being cleared. Look the picture here, Dinesh. The private owner's land was cleared for the construction of this new bridge. Look at here, pictures of the land being cleared. This was in 2018. They cleared and a new road constructed and the bridge was built over this. Look at here again. Ladies and gentlemen of the media and of Trinidad and Tobago, the option that was chosen for this project led to the acquisition of land from two private owners. This was done so that the river now has to pass through the land of the private owners, Dinesh.
Yes.
So the land had to be acquired for a public purpose. I was also informed that this was a project on the Ministry of Works and Transport. It was a project of theirs. Now, when we did a land search, members of the media, what were we discovered is that what the land where the river runs through reveal the following. I would like the Minister of Works and Transport to verify. We have come across a deed, and that deed is dated the 19th of January 2009, and the parcel of land of that deed was purchased by one Rohan Sinanan. One clarification from Mr. Sinanan, which we understand from that deed, he bought for $1.9 million. We would like Mr. Rohan Sinanan to clarify whether he is aware of a deed of 2009, the 19th of January, which is in the name of a person called Rohan Sinanan. It could be another Rohan Sinanan. We are just asking if the real Rohan Sinanan could come forward and tell Trinidad and Tobago if this is their land, which this river and this bridge was constructed on, and whether the state acquired it. And if the state acquired it, how much money did you get for this land that you purchased in 2009 for $1.9 million? So we are asking him to confirm or deny. This deed, which is registered in the Ministry of Legal Affairs in Trinidad and Tobago. And if it is the Rohan Sinanan, who is a minister, we ask him whether he was part of the deliberations at the time the decision was taken to acquire the lands. We like to know if this deed, which is in the land registry in the name of one Rohan Sinanan, for $1.9 million, it was purchased for, that is the land, whether he participated in this decision at the time to acquire the land. We call on the minister to respond, to confirm whether he has received any monies for those lands? And if so, what is the total sum of monies that was paid to him by the state? These are matters that are very important, and it explains why the modern Nimrod ruling this land, that is constructing the Tower of Babel, why this modern Nimrod does not want to proclaim the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act. We call on Mr. Rohan Sinanan. If this is the Sinanan who is the Minister of Works, we ask you to deny or confirm this land acquisition and this deed of 2009, which is in the land registry. That's the first area we want to clarify. The second area, Dinesh, we want to bring to the attention of the nation is the construction of the famous highway to nowhere. A highway to nowhere in the forests of Komuto.
Yes.
Could you imagine that the government of Trinidad and Tobago spent $500 million taxpayers' dollars to build a road in the forest? That was phase one. And it was given to who? A company called Calco. $500 million, and Dinesh, in the process, an area that has been declared under the Environmental Management Authority Act as an environmentally sensitive area because of the diverse and unique species that exist there and plants. The government roughshod, went in a roughshod manner and destroyed many important, unique species and plants, endangering the Aripo savannas, which is unique in our history. In terms of biodiversity, we are very rich in our biodiversity in Trinidad and Tobago. The question that has to be asked, members of the public, who actually hatched this highway to nowhere? Who were the architects and the engineers behind this project to build a highway in the forest and to expend $500 million taxpayers' dollars, which has now been sunk into the earth and is a waste of money? Who is going to be accountable for that $500 million? Who is going to be responsible for this $500 million that has been sunk into the earth? And now we go to what is called phase two of the project. And you know what they call it? The extension of the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway project. And that's three phases. First phase is in the forest, $500 million. The second phase is from Komuto going into Guayco, going into Sangre Grande, and then the third phase will take them straight to Manzanilla. So the project, as I understand it, the value is between 1.3 billion to 1.8 billion. But here what is going on? The Ministry of Works and Transport, through NITCO rather, through the Commission of State Lands, have already issued legal notices to acquire a number of pieces of properties along the pathway of this new highway from Komuto to Manzanilla. We understand that there is a three roads junction. A three roads junction. Eastern Main Road, Guayco Main Road, and Railway Road. There's a property located in that vicinity. We understand that activities on that property has been going on apace. We don't know when the property was purchased. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or when NITCO announced this project, phase 2 to Manzanilla, Komuto to Manzanilla. We don't know. What we do know is that there are cranes and other heavy equipment on that site, and the insignia on the crane is Presticon. Presticon. Members of the media, the highway, like a freight train, is coming directly near that property. And we want to know who are the owners. So in this regard, we call on NITCO commissions to many property owners along the pathway of this new highway. So they must know of this particular property at Three Roads Junction. Who are the owners? What we do know is that there is a Trinbagonian that might be involved in that property. So these cranes and heavy equipment that is involved in the construction of buildings at this site, we want to know whether these cranes with the insignia of Presticon are owned by one Alan Warner. Members of the media, I have in my possession an Express article dated August of 2021, in which Presticon, which was formerly owned by the Massey Group, formerly Neil and Massey, now the Massey Group, was sold, Dinesh, in August of 2021 to who? The Warner Group of companies. You know how much you have in the Express article? They sold it for $30 million. Now, understand this, eh? Presticon has its headquarters on Tunpuna Road. They have land at Ceylons. They have a harbor at Ceylons. They have 17 acres of land in this particular enterprise. And they sold it for $30 million to Presticon, to the Warner Group in August, according to an Express report. However, when we looked at the 2021 Massey accounts, we see where Massey got cash cash of $17 million. So the Express is saying 30 million, and the books, the audited accounts, is saying that Massey received $17 million. The question, and you know what they also experienced in the sale of Presticon, Massey that is, they realized a loss of $5.5 million. 5.5. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we have done the research. Massey bought Presticon Holdings in August of 2006. They were Neil and Massey at that time. 60% of the shareholdings of Presticon was purchased by Massey, Neil and Massey, in 2006, August. You know how much I purchased it for? The 60%, Dinesh? $22.444 million. $22.444 million. You know, if you had purchased the entire 100% in 2006, it would have been $37.4 million for the whole. That was 2006. Think about the value of a dollar in 2006 and think about the value of a dollar in 2021. And you, Massey, sold to Warner Group of companies that said Presticon Limited for how much? $17 million. Now, tell me what kind of math is this? Would you buy a company in 2006 if you had the opportunity for $37 million? And some 16 to 17 years later, you sell that same company for $17 million? How that is making sense? And you know why I raise this question, members of the media? If you don't know, let me tell you. 20% and above of the shareholdings of Massey, the Massey Group, is owned by the National Insurance Board. Let me repeat. Over 20% of the shareholding of Massey is owned by the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago. Yet still, you will buy Presticon 60% in 2006. For what? $22.444 million. And when we do the maths, if you are going for 100%, it would have been $37 million. When you sold it, you had 99.3% of Presticon. Why would you sell to Alan Warner Group of companies that Presticon? They produce pre-stressed concrete slabs and other concrete products. Why would you do that? Why would you sell a company that we have estimated conservatively between $100 million to $150 million? For what? $17 million. And you record in your consolidated accounts, in your 2021 annual report, you experience a loss of the sale of that company of $5.5 million. And you know what is even more strange? They sold a company called Roberts Manufacturing that same year. You know they got a profit of $77 million? $77 million for Roberts Manufacturing, and another company called Highway Properties, you got $19 million in profits. But when you sold the company, Presticon, to the Alan Warner Group of companies, you make a loss of $5 million. And somebody misled somebody because the Express has $30 million, but on your consolidated books, You have what? 17 million. I raise these points to indicate to Trinidad and Tobago that there is something in the mortar besides the pestle. There is something that is smelling to the high heavens in this country. And I call on Robert Bermudez, who is the Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, who is the Chairman of the Bermuda Biscuit Company, who is the owner of KISS, and who is the Chairman of Massey, to explain to all national insurers, all insurers of national insurance, over 400,000 of them. Why did you sell Presticon that you could have made over $150 million on for $17 million? We need answers. And that is why we are saying that in Trinidad and Tobago, the people are being brutalized. The people are being battered. The people are being taken advantage of by this government and their friends and financiers. Because at the end of the day, if what I am saying from the facts I have before me turns out to be true, it meant that the dividends that NIB was supposed to get from that sale of Presticon, they never got. And that could explain the state of play at NIB today. And you know what is even more alarming? We, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, has more than 20% shareholding in the Massey group of companies. But the NIB, that represents over 400,000 insurers, does not have a single director on that company board of directors. Could you believe that? Not one director, Dinesh, on the board of directors. So you have 20% of the shareholdings of Massey, which is a public company traded on the stock exchange, but you don't have one director, according to my information. Correct me if I'm wrong, NIB. Correct me if I'm wrong, Massey. So the question that we have to deal with is connect the dots. Connect the dots. Why would these things be taking place? You build a bridge. You divert the land, Trio land, so the government could acquire it. And you paid 1.9 million in 2009. How much you get fit in 2019? You need to come out and tell us. If it is not Rowan Sinanan, the Minister of Works and Transport, we want forward and let us know. So members of the media, members of the public, I raise these to tell you that we are being raped. Our treasury is being raped. It is being pillaged. We are being battered. We are being brutalized by a criminal enterprise called the PNM. And they are using our taxpayers' dollars, $200 billion in the last 8 years for the acquisition of goods, services, and other works without any proper modern procurement procedures to see who will get what and when they will get it. That is a criminal act being committed against the people. So we serve notice. If you do not proclaim the public procurement law in its original form, not no watered down form, we want it in its original form. If you don't do it, we give the people of Trinidad and Tobago the assurance and the commitment that when we take office with your support at the next general elections due in 2025 August or before, the Kamla Prasad Bissasa's administration will fully proclaim, fully implement, fully operationalize the entire Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act in Trinidad and Tobago. So we need a police investigation into the construction of Balize House. No raffle, no donation of cars for raffle could allow PNM to raise $100 million. This calls for a police investigation. We don't know what role human trafficking is playing in that project. We do know that contractors have made kickbacks to Balize House construction. And that is why we are demanding that the Prime Minister provide Trinidad and Tobago with a list of all the donors of this project. Members of the media, I think that I have sought to capture in a few moments available to me some of our concerns. We are about accountability. We are about scrutiny. We are about holding the executive to account. And that is what we are about. So at this point in time, I will pause and allow the media to ask any questions before we bring this press conference, this media briefing to a close.
Second one, we have a few questions coming. MP Rambly, you mentioned the issue of crime. Yesterday, Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines, says that he is not convinced that a bad economy is linked to a high crime rate. He suggests instead that violent movies and pornography is perhaps driving the high crime rate. How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, what data, what statistics, what science, what empirical formula or evidence, anything is Minister Hines utilizing to arrive at these bright conclusions? Minister Hines is really giving a different definition to what is dotish. I am sorry that is how crass sometimes we have to be, but you just have to listen to that statement. You simply have to read it to see how dotish that sounds. Minister Hines, if you understand anything about crime, you will understand that in our society that there is a link between lack of access to opportunities, lack of employment opportunities, directly related to the possibility of persons committing crimes, being forced to lead a life of crime. So that I don't think we need to really delve too much into it. It just shows how dotish, how out of touch, how ignoramus we have this Minister of National Insecurity. And now turning to say that it is really violent movies and pornographic material. I don't know again what science is Minister Hines utilizing. What survey has he done to determine what movies children are watching these days? Everybody these days are on their phones, right? The majority of persons are utilizing their phones. They are watching YouTube. They are exposed to a lot more material. We accept that. But how is it that he is aware that this is what children are tuning into? And what evidence is there to suggest that even if some percentage of them, it seems as though he's suggesting a majority percentage of our youth are looking at violent movies and pornographic material. What science is he utilizing to arrive at the conclusion that that is causing the crime wave and not lack of
Jobs Act.
jobs and the economic sector.
Yes.
So, and this begs the question, is Minister Hines really hopelessly, desperately trying to say cause of crime? Is he accepting it and then trying to deflect? Or is it that he's totally clueless and totally out of touch, totally disconnected, and as I said, making these dotish comments?
You raised some issues regarding the investigation into the missing file in the AG's office. In light of some of the concerns you've raised up preambly, do you think that Mr. Nelson should perhaps remove himself from this matter?
Absolutely. Rolson Nelson should remove himself as being the advocate, the senior advocate attorney in the proceedings. You just have to take a simple chronology of how things have happened in the public domain. Number one, your Attorney General indicated that something sinister had happened, and therefore he commissioned a committee to investigate what was taking place. Rolson Nelson is there to advise. Whilst you were waiting this report, you get an interim, according to the Attorney General, you have in your possession now an interim report. It is quite clear that that was just a photo op, and I don't know who they think they are fooling, but you are claiming to have in your possession an interim report. What exactly is informing your application which you have filed to set aside that default judgment? Is it not the same matters and contents that are detailed in this interim report? And if it is, this is an interim report, what is going to happen with this application to set aside when you get the final report according to you at June 30th? What is going to take place? And inherent in all of those aspects of what is to take place, informing the process, informing the court proceedings, advising the Attorney General, both as AG and in the public domain and within court proceedings. You are the one who is going to so-called be an officer of the court, to be impartial and objective before the court. You have to advise. So this is where I'm saying that Rolson Nelson is part and parcel of the factual matrix. What is he going to say when that final report comes about? Is he going to tack back in the court proceedings to say, well, I, Rolson Nelson, am now in possession as advisor to the Attorney General of information that I want to bring before the court in that application, provided that the application is still pending at that time, before the court to set aside? So I am saying that there are too many nonsensical permutations which they are part and parcel of, and in the interest of justice, for the administration of justice, for confidence to be reposed in the administration of justice, and furthermore, as a matter of legal ethics, the ethics of the legal profession, Rolson Nelson should step away from the matter as the senior advocate.
Recently, last week, the leader of the opposition has come out and says that it will be her policy to repatriate nationals currently detained in Syria. The Prime Minister has set up a working committee with Mr. Nizam Mohammed to oversee that very thing. Do you have any comments on the work of that committee so far?
Well, I've noticed in today's press where the Prime Minister, and yesterday I think I saw a release, but in today's press, the Prime Minister has taken Senator Varma Diyal Singh to task over some commentary he would have made on the matter. And, well, Senator Mark, I know if any member of the opposition dare to say anything about an independent senator, well, we know what would happen. We would see motions being filed in the Senate bench and in that chamber, and we would see all hell break loose about how the opposition is attacking the independent senatorial bench and all of these things. But on this occasion, well, I don't know if tomorrow morning we're going to see a joint release signed by all so-called independent senators supporting Senator Varma Diyal Singh. I don't know. So I leave that there for now. Getting back to your question, what is the relationship between what I just said and what you have asked? Varma Diyal Singh is being attacked for some commentary he made in relation to the Prime Minister's establishment of this committee to repatriate citizens who went out to conflict zones and things like that. I have had cause to say this in the public domain during the week. I will just simply say what it is I had indicated. One, the Prime Minister and that meeting that he held, neither his committee nor him or his Attorney General or Minister of National Security held any joint briefing in order to enlighten the public on what was discussed and what work the committee will be undertaken. Mr. Nizam Mohammed, who is part of that working committee, he alone addressed the nation. So that was what we received in the public domain, and what Mr. Nizam Mohammed said really did not give an indication that real progress or real work is being done. In fact, he just made mention of work that would have taken place before, and we have a situation where they refer to the Nightingale Committee. This 2018 Nightingale Committee is what they would have spoken to. And you will recall that when that was established in 2018, as of 2020, that same Nightingale Committee and this government indicated that they had drafted a policy in relation to repatriation of citizens, the reintegration of persons coming back from conflict zones with supporting legislation. They spoke about the fact that the necessary administrative and legislative processes were at an advanced stage. This is the government saying that the Nightingale Committee had undertaken this type of work and these type of considerations, and that they were at advanced stage towards the eventual submission of a draft policy. That is 2020. In 2023, this week, you have Nizam Mohammed coming now, not flanked by Minister Hines or the Prime Minister or anyone else from that national security team, and just speaking about purported work generally. And it proves that the government has not done any work, any substantial work since 2018 to 2020, and then from 2020 till now, definitely no substantial work. Furthermore, what we are seeing on the part of the government is that you are seeing that there is resort to the lack of resources. Now, international agencies are not going to treat lightly with that. They are going to deem that with a very dim microscope. And therefore, what I mean by that is that the repeating of lack of resources is not something our international partners are going to be too pleased with. It may be true, but it is not something at this late stage of the game that they are going to take lightly. And when you're dealing with a grave human rights issue, it is something that really the government ought to do better, and they ought to deliver better. There are issues such as compilation of the names and to complete the verification of persons, the potential problems that we may encounter for those persons who are actually repatriated in terms of their reintegration into society, obligations that you want to impose on those repatriated persons because you want to make sure that national security as a whole is properly factored and protected. These are the real matters we want to hear the Prime Minister and his National Security Council talk about. So I continue to maintain, and I am sure I speak for the opposition in saying that we must have full and frank discussions and honest debate on this matter, and with the families, of course, who are affected by persons going out there to conflict zones and seeking to return. And I think this is something that is deeply concerning as well. As I end off on that point, that no member, no family members were invited to that meeting. So I don't know who exactly they were talking to in terms of updating themselves as to the situation on repatriation. So these are things that I would say in passing in response to what the Prime Minister indicated. And as I said, I am saying that he's taking someone to task in the public domain, namely Senator Dial Singh, answer any of these questions.
Senator Mark, with regards to your comments about Balize House, well, it's a two-part question. First of all, is there any legal means to force the Prime Minister to disclose the amount of money that Balize House, the renovations have?
Talking about the need for white-collar crime, obviously must face the consequences of their action. A person who has been advocating as if he's a number one corruption buster should find destruction of Balize House. I think that from a moral point of view, and whilst legally we cannot force him to release those names of those donors, I think that it is a responsibility on the police to investigate that matter. Because where did this government get $100 million or raise it to build Balize House? It's a legitimate question, and we need to get answers. So I am saying that whilst we may not, as a party, as an opposition, be able to legally force him to answer and provide answers to our questions to the public, required for democracy and for transparency and accountability. So that is why we are going to continue to drive home this point and to seek to get answers for this particular project.
That's all the questions we have.
Now, before we close, I just want to say in closing, Dinesh, that seeing on the insignia of the crane and cranes and other heavy equipment on that property in Kwaiko, Railway Road, Eastern Main Road, seeing that the insignia is that of Presticon, and we have just established that Presticon was purchased in April, I think I said August, is April of 2021 by the Warner Group of companies. It is incumbent upon the Warner Group of companies to tell Trinidad and Tobago who contracted them to clear the land and to construct these buildings. Who, which individual, or which firm or company contracted the Warner Group of companies to construct these buildings on the site. And also, in closing, Dinesh, any highway that is going through that property or near to that property will see its value appreciate. So we need answers from NITCO as to the structure of ownership of those lands that are in close proximity to the highway from Komuto to Manzanilla. So NITCO has a duty to share with us. In closing, I would like to say on behalf of the leader of our great party, the membership of our great party, all our colleagues in the both houses of parliament, we would like to extend our warmest greetings to the entire Christian community on the occasion of the upcoming Easter observances. It is a very holy, it's a very significant period in the lives of the Christian community in Trinidad and Tobago, because it marks not only the crucifixion but the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And therefore, it is a period that, leading up to Holy Week, that is observed, and we want, on behalf of our party, on behalf of our leadership, on behalf of our membership, to extend happy Easter greetings to the entire Christian community, be it Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, it does not matter. All Christians, we celebrate Easter with you, and we wish you a very happy, holy Easter 2023 from the leadership, membership of our great party, the United National Congress. I will now call on my brother, Dinesh, to close off by dealing with autism and that particular period.
Thank you very much, Senator Mack. Of course, Senator Mack has dealt with religious observance and celebration, and I wish to just simply touch on a social observance. And what we are talking about is every 2nd of April, Senator Mack, members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen, every 2nd of April we observe World Autism Awareness Day. And we do this in order to increase awareness, encourage worldwide support, promote acceptance of autism, and inspire individuals. According to the World Health Organization, it is estimated about 1 in 100 children has autism worldwide. This year's theme is transformation towards a neuro-inclusive world for all. And in the interest of time, I will not go into what the United Nations has deemed necessary and focus on this year. I think that with the help and understanding autism is an issue or a situation where people who suffer from autism, despite challenges, a person with autism, it is accepted that they have unique strengths, such as logical thinking, right? Intense focus and attention to detail and strong memory skills. So that even when we talk about autism, these are things that really are associated with those who have autism. So let's not put people in small boxes. Rather, it's time to break the box. Our world, the entire world, needs people who think differently. In a world where everyone thinks the same, nothing would ever change. So through inclusiveness and support, let's make this world a better place for every human being. So that is my message on World Autism Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, members of the media, members of the public, or viewing public, whether in Trinidad and Tobago or outside of Trinidad and Tobago. We'd like to thank you for listening and viewing our regular Sunday media briefing today. And in closing, finally, may I invite you to attend to our Monday night People's Report Forum, which takes place at the Hillview Auditorium in Tunapuna on Monday, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 3rd of April, and we invite all of you to join us there at the auditorium, Hillview College in Tunapuna, tomorrow, April 3rd. The feature address, of course, will be delivered by the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, political leader and opposition leader of our great and glorious party. Thank you very much. Have a great and safe evening. Happy Easter to all, and thank you so very much. Thank you.
Yeah.